another disturber of the peace from Alcatel-Lucent, going to come and share some of her experiences and stories of how she continually disrupts her organization.
One of the things that Ben challenged me with when I joined Alcatel-Lucent was he said, look, if people are not coming in my office complaining about you, you're not doing enough to make change in the company. One of the things that I found in joining a large company was everybody had their specific thing that they did, right? And they didn't want to fail at it because that's what they did. And they were afraid to fail at it, so they couldn't help this person, they couldn't help that person, and it wasn't really a team because they couldn't fail. They had spent the last 20 years at Alcatel-Lucent terrified to death to fail because that's what they did and that's what they were good at, versus looking at themselves as being part of a bigger team. When I joined Alcatel-Lucent, it was, let's create a mission, right? The mission is we're going to change the service provider industry, just like we can change financial services institutions. You're going to bring them to the next generation. So we gave ourselves a mission, right? Save the whales, kind of. I knew I couldn't do it alone, so gathered some people. But it was a combination of people that had different skills, right? One was shaping the team. Then there was the challenge of us versus them, right? Us being, of course, the outsiders, them being the people inside. Alcatel-Lucent had been there for a long time, and getting over that hurdle of the us versus them. How do you not say? A lot of it was also keeping to drive the team. There was constant pushback. We don't want to be part of the team. People are saying it's going to fail miserably. You can never change this industry, right? So you have to keep people motivated on an ongoing basis. And then you get some wins, and you have to make sure you celebrate those wins within the team. So you start with the individual and making sure the individual can fail, and they'd be, it's okay if you fail. And then you're part of a team, and the team can also, the team might fail at some things, but you might succeed at some things, and then celebrating the wins. So my parting message is, just do it. And of course, if you have to, deny you did it or ask for forgiveness. Push your teams to make change. That's my message.
I want to talk a little bit about how the past persists and how the past and technological paths continue to persist in our present and often seem to persist well into our visible future. One of the very practical problems that they were trying to solve with the Electoral College was how in the hell do you communicate in any reasonable way the votes from this vast, vast wilderness, a vast wilderness. If you can imagine an area 3 times the size of Germany with only 4 million people, and with the technology that was available at the time, they needed to figure out a way to get that information to DC. And so essentially what they did is, within each of the states, there was a vote, and the geographic area of each of the individual states was kind of small enough they could manage the voting process. And then the electors would go to Washington and express the will of the people of the state of Virginia, express the will of the people of the state of New York. And that's how it worked. The interesting part is that we have had mechanisms to convey instantaneous information for a really, really long time. And yet still, in the 2012 election, the President of the United States will not be elected by the people of the United States directly. That person will be elected by an electoral college of people who are actually not the voice of the United States. And so the question is, how is it that these things persist? And I think if you look at corporations, a lot of the structures of corporations are also reflective of the technologies that were available 250 years ago. So this kind of structure, which I think everybody's sort of familiar with, where you've got the big cheese and then some very big guys and then some middle-level dudes and then the great unwashed masses of the company. The reason we have this pyramidal structure, in part, isn't just a philosophical one, it's also a technical one. It's that the communication mechanisms that were available demanded that you use this idea of an information cascade. And what I love about that phrase, information cascade, is that the water metaphor is quite useful, because water flows downhill. And the only time when water flows uphill is actually when you have a cataclysmic event, like a tsunami or a hurricane. And if you think about the way information flows in a traditional corporate structure, the only way that the voice of somebody at the bottom usually gets heard in the executive suite is when you have some sort of horrifying cataclysmic event. That's when water flows uphill. You live in this pyramidal, cascaded informational structure, and then you go home and you tweet about it. And what's amazing about Twitter, of course, is that there is no hierarchical structure that's implicit in it's a self-organizing network, and the nodes find each other. And sometimes information from an unknown node becomes burst up to the top of the screen instantaneously. My final message to you is this. The past tends to persist. We have the technology, and we in fact have the culture in our own lives to change the way information flows and the way companies interact. In fact, we do it all the time when we're wearing our civilian hats, but it takes a decisive action and a choice to fight against the history and change the way we act. Thank you.